Yeah, hello, this is Luke Banton. So, this is somewhat a plug, but it's a plug of, as well as just a brief look at what I think is going on with atheism at the moment, and how there's a lot of real humane sort of stand back attitudes from who I would call the negative atheists, that I've identified as a negative atheist since 16, 17 years of age. But they are people who, if you buy books like Atheism, The Case Against God by George Smith, or Atheism, A Philosophical Justification by Michael Martin, they tend to portray and discuss atheism in the context of two kinds. One is just negative atheism, which is not a religion. It's there are sayings about it like atheism is a religion, like abstinence is a sex position, or atheism is a religion, like off is a TV station. It's just they're non-comparable because there's nothing to believe in. It's not nihilism either, where they're saying, you know, like old original nihilism, where it's like nothing fucking matters. It's not that at all. It is just about abstaining from supernatural God belief. So in George Smith's book, he does mention, you know, the three monotheisms: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, but he tends to focus on Christianity and the atheists' response to Christianity. So in a debate, what a negative atheist will do is that they will listen to and comprehend all the arguments put forward for why God exists, or why Christianity is true, or whatever religion the theists are arguing for in that case, and they will deconstruct, rebut, and disprove their arguments. So all the negative atheist does is sort of says, you know, I'm here if you have a case that your religion is true. I'm even possibly willing to convert to it, but you just haven't made a case, a good enough case that your religion is true. So atheism, as in its broadest sense, doesn't mean you're running around saying there is no God, and you're all like, you know, you're egging houses going, there's no fucking God. It's much more chilled. It's like high school weed. It's the high school weed of, you know, we're just chilling back here. If they can prove it, we'll believe. If they can't prove it, don't worry. And so I just smoke weed. I haven't for years, but when I first started, I found it to be quite relaxing. But so then there's positive atheism, and positive atheism is a little more assertive. It's not a preaching thing, but it's positive. To be a positive atheist is to say that you understand the arguments that you could make to demonstrate logically that no gods exist. You know, to sum up most of the different religions going around, there's about 1,000 gods anyway. So like, if you were in a religion like Christianity with one God, the Heavenly Father, then you would be an atheist still regarding all the 999 other gods you don't believe in. And that's why there's that popular expression, atheism, we go one God further. But yeah, positive atheists will look into arguments like the arguments from divine attributes and incoherence, which look into how God's infinite knowledge and infinite love and infinite power are all irreconcilable and logically absurd attributes, that a God couldn't have all those attributes at once, or if they did, they wouldn't be evil and suffering, and you know, those sorts. That's just a very brief. Yeah, once again, yeah, the Michael Martin book, Atheism: A Philosophical Justification, even goes into arguments disproving theism and arguments against God's existence, expressed in form like mathematical equations and algebra and stuff. But yeah, I'm reaching a point now where, because I was just a bit of a nice guy who didn't, I would contest points of view on forums, and if I was invited to a discussion, I would express my point of view. But I was challenged by someone at a club I used to DJ at called Platform 3, and she had said to me, she was this pretty business girl, and she had said that assertiveness, she had this DNM with me on the couch and encouraged me to be more assertive. So I'll never forget that conversation. She was a very pretty girl, and yeah, but so that's part of what's led me at this point now, amongst other factors, to think about the positive atheist stance, and particularly with some of the experiences I've had where I got railroaded with a bunch of stupid assumptions about my mentality, essentially because the people who were sizing me up, you know, they had been for years, they had been my employers for years, and I wound up confirming that they were religious believers of some kind. One a Freemason, and the other one either a Freemason as well, or some sort of Christian, some sort of, you know, holy monarch. Holy monarch, what do we do about Rolf Harris? Like that kind of, you know, I'm sure we could put him on a tablet. And I just think, you know, I probably wouldn't have lost my standing with that job if I had just said to them at the start, like, when you check someone, you check them with from your point of view, there's a parameter of a language, like a linguistic framework that you perceive with and look through, and like books on epistemology will help you to broaden your horizons on that sort of thing, because like I now see this happening quite a bit, and can be quite damaging to people's lives, you know. If a religious person who's like, you know, buying and selling fuckloads of pharmaceuticals, going, oh, seeing is believing, you know, shake the drug rep's hand, seeing is believing, seeing is believing, seeing is believing. Run checks on Luke, oh, Luke's watching Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, oh no, what's he gonna do? What if he takes drugs and dresses up like Freddy Krueger and actually puts, you know, blades on his hand? Like, the sort of reserved, I understood I don't dress the same as everyone, but yeah, just the types of but religious belief can convolute a tolerance for diversity and appreciation of diversity within the context of functioning human rights, and that's why I think there are terms like religious discrimination. But what has pissed me off, and when something pisses me off, I think this time around it's inspired. It's definitely inspired a book that I've nearly finished. But yeah, I just think, ask yourselves, like, if there's if your life gets ruined because an employer can't go outside of his religion when they run, personality checks on you or whatever, character evaluations, and like, oh, he knows what art is. Oh, his best grades were in art class. Are we still sure? Like, how we know he's not gonna? Anyway, just the questions they ask are stupid. I mean, I know what it means to edit films and make music videos and film scenes and act roles and you don't really saying you believe in any suggestion you take your source for prescriptive moral awareness is from the theater. It's bullshit. Like, you feel something in art and it inspires you, and you leave and you think about why, and and then you comprehend that. But yeah, this lunatic's judgment it's really reinforced a concern that I think I had from the outset. But at church, it was a case of like people being mistreated or sexually abused or harassed because of biblical Christianity fucking someone's head up. And I didn't think I'd have any sort of comparable concern of any kind in the private sector pharmacy world, but I turned out to be wrong, and that turned out to be why, like, the owners had this enigmatic, quiet distance, like, oh yeah, okay, we'll think you'll be right, and like, and plus you're supposed to be working to be in their good books and earn their approval. But then when that became tantamount to making some sort of religious believers acknowledgement or conversion or whatever they were trying, I just went, this is sick. Like, this is absolutely sick. It's beyond a fucking joke. So I am concerned about, like, the damage that the danger and the risks that it poses if people are getting sized up and profiled. And you might think about this in your job, is your, if a boss is checking you while you're working your job and, approving of you in one, saying, yeah, okay, oh, we have a bit of an issue with you. Oh, as soon as they start to intimate they have an issue with you, like, ask them to either write it on paper or tell you to your face, what is the fucking issue? Say it, and say it now. And if it's some sort of, if it turns out, because you might need to find out that you're not actually employed by a religious fucking grand poobah from the Freemason club of fucking weirdos, before things escalate and they misjudge you too much for too long. But there'll be more on this, and that's from my take from it. I'm definitely thinking more about enjoying my godlessness in the sense that I asserted a bit more. I have wondered if like naturalistic philosophies and irreligion and atheistic logical epistemology is a better way to even make sense of the claims made by Christianity in the first place. So that means when I talk about them, I'm not being a Christian. Hopefully that's clear enough in the videos that are going up on this series on my YouTube channel. But yeah, the positive atheists, when invited to a debate, or that someone agrees to debate them or wants to debate them, are able to argue that no gods exist. And Professor Victor Stenger, the particle physicist, has written books like God, the Failed Hypothesis, and Not by Design, The Origins of the Universe, and he is very interesting. He was sort of an email corresponding mentor of mine for some years till he died. Well, he died I think 2014. But of all the atheists that debate whose works I collect, Professor Stenger's is among the more impressive, because he's actually, he gets involved in some very detailed debates about particle physics and quantum mechanics and stuff like that. But he also says, like, we can conclude that no God exists, which is something that most atheists aren't taking that approach. They're taking the look at all these things that are wrong with religion approach, which is where they break down the claims made by the religionists. So Professor Stenger can break down the wrong claims made by religionists, but then he can also add to it and say, well, here's my argument for why your God doesn't exist. And I've taken elements from both sort of subsidiaries of atheism, the negative and positive atheists, and tried to combine elements from both of them into my critique of the religion I was to some extent raised with. I always had a bit of a smart-ass attitude, so I was always, in the years I was made to go to church, I was even then always reserving judgment. But I got accused of blasphemy of some sort once when I discovered a Bible contradiction. But I've followed that debate out in great detail since, and I had a good point discovering that Bible contradiction. That's just something churches do, where they say the Bible's the Word of God. They don't know how to handle a contradiction. Well, some of them don't. At most it proved I had a doofus for a youth pastor. But anyway, this is getting near to the 20-minute mark. So I would seriously recommend the following books. Atheism, The Case Against God by George Smith. Atheism, A Philosophical Justification by Michael Martin. Not by Design, The Origin of the Universe by Victor Stenger. God, the Failed Hypothesis by Victor Stenger. And my favorite short piece, which can be found in a collected works of the Marquis de Sade, or online if you Google search for the Marquis de Sade's dialogue between a priest and a dying man from 1782. And that's essentially the Marquis de Sade was like a playwright and a fiction and a crime fiction writer, but he started a movement called the Libertines. He was quite a disturbed person, but his prose is excellent, and the dialogue between the priest and the dying man is very entertaining, so I hope you check it out. Thank you. Area Nation. They as I learned, like, these bosses you work for nearly 9 years, and it's all about, when you work in the company, they're a private company, so you got to impress the owners. But then a lot of questions were quite relevant. I never got to ask the face-to-face to upper management. But their check and correct procedure while at work was always about, like, I think it was they had questions like, he listens to a lot of Korn, so is he getting his moral guidance from the singers from Korn, or is he a fag and he wants to suck Korn's dick and Marilyn Manson's dick? And there were those sorts of questions, and it made me wonder what sort of elaborate social psychoanalytic linguistic framework they were operating with, because A, they were getting wrong results, and B, they knew I'd tussle a bit in writing with religious stupidity. And because I do think it's evil. I mean, so yeah, learning at the end these, I wanted to say to him all throughout my career, like, your check and correct processes. I'd have learnt to drive a car by now if you weren't so concerned that I would watch Freddy Krueger on Nightmare on Elm Street and then go and stab people and make them float into the ceiling. You know, it's just stop this attrition, or at least tell me what it's about. I mean, surely they can't be saying, "Oh, does Luke believe in Nightmare on Elm Street?" Like, I think surely they could not be that stupid. But then I started to wonder, they're a private company and with private privileged information, so what's the credentials of the man that is giving me these private business checks at work? Is he a qualified social psychiatrist? Is he a psychiatrist? What are his qualifications as it pertains to correcting, checking and correcting staff? Because it winds up that then between him and you, he might think he can build a case against you. Because he's got concerns about the entertainment that you like. And so you have to ask him, why do you have that problem? And I just have no idea what his complaints could be. Like, I think it were things like, you listen to Marilyn Manson songs and then what? You go out and act like what? Like his lyrics are teaching you subliminal instructions, like RoboCop, when you know they hack RoboCop in RoboCop 2 and give him all those stupid extra prime directives. I felt very much like RoboCop in RoboCop 2 when I worked for Capital Chemist, because RoboCop was starting to get some of his humanity back, and then the company moved in and just gave him an extra 100 and something protocols, and he just turned into this stupid version of RoboCop where like kids were spray painting on his back. And so to learn that the metaphysics and epistemology that were the underpinnings of these men who are correcting me, and there are only two of them, the co-founders of the company, that they think things like simplistic Bronze Age-ish religious cliches, like seeing is believing. So yeah, like when's that going to go out officially? There's much more depth and definition to the things that you see in life than someone just looking at the whole thing going, "Oh, seeing is believing." Like, get fucked. I never heard him say the word unbelievable once. I did hear him say his company never makes mistakes. I did hear him say he's a scientist. And I did read books by 20 to 30 more prominent scientists who constantly talked about the humility that comes with application of the principles of liberal scientific method, and that no scientist in principle ever goes on to think that they can be completely without error. In fact, if they come up with a theory or something like that, it's always open to be challenged and falsified. One scientist had his pet theory destroyed, and he went to the scientist who destroyed his theory, and he said, "Thank you. I'm very impressed that you have outsmarted me." And there's none of that attitude at all in these two guys that own Capital Chemist. So the last question before I quit completely, because I did not like the way I was treated by, I can't say the whole company, because there's no such thing as a company. It's always people, and my coolest friends like Melzy, and other people I worked with in staff, still love them, and I still hope to remain good friends with them. But to learn in the end the both of them are possibly Freemasons? Like, who wants... So just because they started the company privately, they think they can run their own private checks on who is good to work for the company and who's not. And really, I should have said, you know, your every check, I want what you think you're checking me for, what your checking system is like, what your results of your checks are like, and I'd like them all in writing. And I wish I had said that. I wish I'd said that earlier on, because yeah, you actually don't know if the way that the boss is profiling you at work, you don't know if that's a build up to your next promotion or to him trying to make an illegal bind profile that tries to characterize you as insane due to, you know, a primary stimulus of his choosing, which has been video in my case. He thinks anyway, it's like, if he did his research, he would have read my college art class qualifications, and he would have even known I couldn't have made if my mind was that susceptible to be dangerous in the psycho sense because of video, then I couldn't have made the assignments that I made in college. I couldn't have you know, this profile is going. There will be lawsuits in the end. Pain is really my only physically disabling pain at the moment, is what I need to work to recover from. But and this profile is an insult, and like the idea of it getting pushed onto any of my friends or peers or friends from high school or college, or any of the friends I grew up with, when you knew Luke, you know, they have their ways to try to you know, pull a scam on you. So there's things I'll be doing this year to overturn this, and I'm inspired by the friends I knew in high school who, the vast majority of them, very cool people. I think in a way wanting us to hide defined the stereotype of you know, there's jocks and nerds, and it's not to say no one ever got picked on, but it's also fair that I mean, I was a person who spent time with, I like sitting down and writing fictional short stories for four of the girls who are friends of mine, Jill and Jenny and Cassie and Liz, and I'd write them short stories to entertain them, and then that'll be giggling on lunch break. But then I also enjoyed hanging out with the so-called jocks. Buy Gippsland Dairy, mango, passion fruit, twist yogurt, from your local capital chemist.
They don't want to hear what I gotta say there, because y'all need to suffer.
Here's Claire on how everyone needs to suffer.
It's true. Y'all need to go the fuck without. Y'all need to suffer. Y'all need to fucking starve a little bit and feel a bit uncomfortable and go without. Fucking suffer.
So you're a minimalist of sorts?
No, I'm not a minimalist. I'm an existentialist. It's more the fact that...
Do you like Sartre being in nothingness?
No, sweetie, because nihilism is just the end result of giving up to the grand overall.
But he's an existentialist atheist. He wasn't a nihilist.
You ever read the shit? Okay, he wasn't exactly Nietzsche, but then... He's nothing...
Nietzsche, there's no real nothing matters archetype in Sartre's writings.
Oh dear, look, Claire, have a cherry ripe and shut up. No, I'm not in the mood at the moment. I'm not.
Claire's not in the mood, so there'll be more on
later,
deterioration.
I will
later
inform everybody why it is that they need $2 more.
I'm here with my friend Fernando. He does not go to church like me. Why you leave church, Fernando?
Hello. Who's the name?
Can you say why you leave church?
Oh, there's very close. Very close. Pretty close.
No. Why you leave the church? No church.
No church. No.
Why you go?
Oh, nowhere.
You no like?
No like.
Don't believe?
No leave. This the church. This girl. This like just church or not?
I'm asking you why you. We don't like church.
No, I'm
What
like
you? What do you? What makes you angry about the church? They piss you off?
Oh. Jesus. I don't like Jesus
You don't like Jesus in the sky?
in the sky, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fernando has left the church. He does not think anymore that Jesus is in the sky. I repeat, he does not think Jesus is in the sky. Anything else, Fernando? You like the Bible?
No. Oh, hello.
That'll have to do.
Kinky.
Now he's showing his true self,
Terribly,
his true
terribly.
colours.
Yeah, it's nice color.
Apparently, this is Deterioration, webisode 6.
Episode 6. We're talking more about the end of Christian monotheism in particular.
He means the death of God. The death of God. We're
Including
killing
the death of
God, y'all. That's all you need to know. You don't get much better than that for a catch line. Killing God. Okay.
I know you interview me about. I'm rambling about.
Can you say
garbage.
watch Luke Banton on YouTube?
Watch Luke Banton on YouTube.
Thanks, Max.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
Jij had een normaal leven daarvoor en toen plots kom je uit narcose en dan merk je dat het leven niet meer hetzelfde zal zijn. Hoe reageer je daar dan op?
Ja, eerst met heel veel ongeloof.
Ongeloof is eigenlijk het juiste woord. Excuseer. Ongeloof is eigenlijk het juiste woord wat Rijke hier hanteert. Omdat dat was bij mij dus ook mijn eerste gewaarwording dat ik dacht dat kan niet. Dat mag. Excuseer dames en heren. Dus je probeert dan terug je toekomst. Ik begrijp echt niet wat er hier aan het gebeuren is. Excuseer. Sorry, echt sorry. Excuseer dames en heren. Dat betekent ook dat bijvoorbeeld seksualiteit ook een groot probleem bijvoorbeeld wordt.
Ja, mijn vriend heeft het gewoon gedaan gemaakt. En ik neem hem daar ook niet kwalijk.
Plus het feit als je met seks omgaat, is het niet alleen het fysieke dat telt, maar ook soms de lieve woordjes.
Good evening. So, on my list of reading, I have a very extensive to-do list pertaining to books, and there's really more to get through than I have time for. Plus is the book that I'm working to write, which is actually drawing a lot of, it's cross genre. So it's the first, not only is it the first book I've will have written, but it's a cross genre book. So if you wanted a source or an inspiration that many years ago, in fact before my 20s, that was while I was at CIT, there was this pretty girl, Anna, and she was a fellow student, and I had been on an emailing list called Avoid L, and it was an emailing list for designed initially for the network of students of Professor Victor Stenger, who died in 2014. Very sad about his loss, because I'd been following a lot of his online debates over the years. But he was emeritus professor of particle physics at the University of Hawaii, and adjunct professor of philosophy at the University of Colorado. And he was a brilliant mind, because he was constantly showing that he was cross-connotative of all these concepts in quantum mechanics as well as philosophy. So also, as far as his debates go for atheism, I saw him as advancing the frontier of the strength and veracity of arguments that people could make, that atheists could make against or for the non-existence of the Christian God and the God of monotheism. the three main of which in our world this day is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, I'd read a series of interviews between him and my first atheist mentor, Mr. Cliff Walker, and another friend who sadly has passed away. At one point, he was talking about involving me in some web page preservation project work to help store his life's work. He's just a disabled man. But he was brilliant when it came to if you were to send him hate mail, essentially, religious people were doing this all the time, sending him emails about, why he's offending God and Jesus Christ, and why he should convert again, and why is reason any better than faith, and all these sorts of topics. So through him I heard of Professor Stenger, and then Professor Stenger, I'd sent him a request essentially saying, can I be a part of your mailing list? So it's the dispatch of emails that are originally designed for his students at those universities. I think primarily it was the Hawaii University. I obviously told him that I didn't have the money, and I wasn't an enrolled student. I said I'm from Australia, actually, and but he allowed me to be on this list, which is where you just get, throughout the week, you get emails that he's prepared for his students on various topics. He's actually got books out called God, the Failed Hypothesis. And so in atheism, there's typically two branches. Negative atheism, which is the mere abstinence from belief in a God. If the position could be described in a statement, it would be, I lack God belief. Whereas Christians, one way Christians like to misrepresent atheists is to say, well, you must hate God, or you must believe no God exists, or or you believe in the devil, or it's always they don't really get the epistemology of it. But all negative atheism means is to be without belief in a God. Then there's positive atheism, which is a positive atheist is still a negative atheist as well. It's just an additional advance. Except you don't have to take e-meter tests at the Church of Scientology or anything like that. Positive atheism is still atheism. It's just an atheist who's prepared to sit with other people and talk to them and say, look, you believe, you want me to believe, I don't believe, and here's why I don't think your God exists. And then out come the positive atheists' arguments. And many of them are quite popularly known in debate circles. There's the argument from evil and suffering, which looks into... there's the argument from divine attributes and their incoherence, which talks about how a God cannot be all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving at the same time, without absurd contradictions bearing out in this world that would just be impossible. So these positive arguments are designed to establish a firm case that not only do the negative atheist knows how to show why a believer's arguments don't work. So, the believer makes the argument first, and the atheist just says, well, that argument doesn't work for reasons yada yada yada. And they just essentially challenge and falsify the arguments that the believer has brought forth first. But it's custom for... if it was me, I would say, well, I'm aware of positive atheist arguments. Would you be offended if I was to argue? Or are you prepared to listen to me if I attempt to argue that your God doesn't exist? And sort of thing I only debate if, in principle, it's permitted. I don't think atheists, we aren't really interested in, we're not even really a group. the absence or the lack of theism, as I learnt well from a man named George H. Smith, is that the scope of atheism is it's tricky to say that we can be classed as a group, because all that one atheist needs to have in common with another atheist, by the definition of atheism without theism, is that both those people are without a belief in God. So beyond that, there's no other, like, an atheist can't come up to me and say, "Oh, you haven't kept this commandment," or you haven't done the crossing of the desert in the unblinking eye, so you should wear the stone of shame, like that Simpsons episode about the stone cutters. There's nothing like that. And the atheist movement, if it's going to be called that, isn't even it's a bunch of individuals that the only thing they have in common is that they're human and that they lack theism. Every one of us started out as a negative atheist. We had to be taught what theism was before we could become theists. So atheists lack that belief. They've assessed what it's about, and they've chosen to abstain. So, as far as ideology goes, it really outdoes the Christian at church, saying, "I'm going to abstain from sex till I'm married. Only after I'm married will I imagine the God who sacrificed virgins and babies and commanded all these wars and killed his son. Only after I am married will I imagine him watching over me while I have sex in bed." And that's something that, anyway. So religion, atheism is a religion, just like abstinence is a sex position. There's one of the jokes going around to try to make the point out about what atheism means, and atheism is a religion, just like Off is a TV channel. And what I say is more or less, it's similar to what the Church of Satan say. They're not interested in people they're not interested in recruiting people. They only want people who are already with them. And that's exactly how it was for me. At no point were any of these atheist mentors trying to say, they didn't just blankly approach me going, "Well, you're in a Christian cult, I'll teach you the ways of the atheist." I had to seek each of them out, and I had to ask them questions. And, they freely admitted that all they were giving me was their opinions. Well, I mean, I found they wrote very eloquently, very well thought out. So, one atheist is never responsible for the actions, I guess, because independence and self-responsibility is so emphasized when atheism is talked about. You don't really blame one unbeliever for the choices and behaviors of another unbeliever. Were that ever claimed, even those the two concerned unbelievers would get together going like, "What the fuck? Like, what were you on about?" With all that, we agreed about thinking for ourselves, and we agreed about taking responsibility for ourselves. And we agreed we don't have a God belief. So it means there's a lot of working things through that you have to do for yourself. And there's no, you're not an atheist yet, but you will be one day if you square up to Alain de Botton, or you're free to disagree with. It's a bit like how they enjoy it in science student debates, where they say, "Here's my hypothesis and theory. Can you try to falsify it?" If an atheist can say something to me that I hadn't considered before, you're always open to think about what that is, and you're always open to whether it concludes you to re-examine some of your ideas and change them if need be. So yeah, that's the gist of the definition and scope of atheism. But yeah, so I was at CIT, and we were studying chemistry and doing experiments. There's a talk about the experiment I did because it was one I felt I learned a lot from in principle and in RSPCA. If you want to extend the RSPCA's creed to microbes and single-celled organisms, then that certainly would apply to my experiment in the CIT Bruce lab one day with a microscope and the amoeba. We were studying. It wasn't amoeba. It was paramecium. Sorry, we're studying paramecium. But there was this pretty blonde girl named Anna, and I remember her looking me in the eye one day, and she asked me, "Luke, do you think our thoughts are atoms?" And she'd gone cross-eyed in one eye as she asked me, so I thought it was very cute. And she had an interest in borrowing one of Professor Stenger's books from me called Physics and Psychics. And she offered me her book, Sophie's World, which was a novel. It's called, its subheading, it's by Justine Garter, and its subheading is a novel about the history of philosophy. So by this time, I think, I had ordered some books for myself, but most of the references, if not all of them, that I was getting from either basic Googling or the Positive Atheism website with Mr. Walker, who was sort of mentoring me as I'd exited the church, and I wanted to build on my knowledge of philosophy. So so I was lent this novella, Sophie's World, and it tells the story of this girl, Sophie, who's receiving letters from a relative talking about different key philosophers throughout different times throughout the last 2 millennia, starting with ancient Greeks right through to modern existentialists. But she's getting these postcards from a strange they're written in a strange way, like they're each a surprise to her, and they're just brief summaries, each postcard, summaries of the core ideas and arguments of a particularly noted philosopher in history, and what ideas that he or she contributed to philosophy as a whole. The book has an interesting twist to it. If you enjoy a good read, I'd recommend it to you. I won't spoil the ending for you. Yeah, so in that sense, I've taken inspiration from, if I can design a fictional twist, if I can like hybrid philosophy and fiction myself, but I want to try and do it in a really, you might say, dark. For me, the dark when it's called a theme, I don't like the stereotypical emo. I'm not really down. Artists are free to do what they have to do as far as their own passions go concerning artistic expression, and their right to do that. But it's just not my thing. The white stripes, and but I do like dark themes, and I've always been an appreciator of dark artistry. Stephen King, growing up, the Nightmare on Elm Street series. So, yeah, Stephen King books and shows like 11/22/63 and the movie It, the original It with Tim Curry, and Kingdom Hospital, and so I would aim, and in fashion, always like black clothes, and some very attractive women that are very good at black clothing, and I enjoy wearing black myself. So I don't see it to be about a particular mood or anything. Nihilism. I was just talking earlier today about nihilism being a whole nothing matters standpoint. But I was actually quite touched by. Well, I thought it to be quite moving. This short 40-page piece by Peter Stodged named Neo-Nihilism, that goes quite a bit into David Hume's groundwork on arguments for moral understanding and the difference between prescriptive and descriptive morals. So what I think people miss perhaps when they get when they try to crack a case on nihilism in a priori is that it's not people's decisions to want to reach a point where they're looking at themselves in life and they feel like saying everything's meaningless. If the Christian writer having at them for that, they should read their own book of Ecclesiastes, where it says everything is meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless, says the teacher. Nihilism. That aspect of nihilism is nothing new, and something compared to it can be found in the Bible anyway. So, but the point is, in what context are they saying that everything's meaningless? And because nihilists talk about the difference between the morals that you live by and would teach someone else about, and the morals you observe in the system around you and how other people treat you or judge you. So moral nuances and moral diversity is recognized by nihilism. It's just I think it's that it's a progress from Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer wrote The World as Will and Idea, which is a philosophy book that influenced the film design and the script writing for the Matrix trilogy. And I'm not sure if they're intentional metaphors. Like Schopenhauer's world as will and idea is that we're beings of will. Everything else around us is comprised of ideas. And it's meaningless too in Schopenhauer's writing. He has this strong pessimism that though he was an inspiration and a mentor to Nietzsche was unable to be as pessimistic as Schopenhauer was, or is said to have been. Schopenhauer, often occasioning the conclusion that it would have been better off had we not been born. Nietzsche couldn't stand for that, but now the neo-nihilists are even happier than Nietzsche was for a time there. So I intend to bring together concepts from my reality as it's been handed to me, underhanded to me, and fiction and philosophy together, and try and mix those themes together into this book. But anyway, that's my log for the day. Good night, everyone.